Hello and welcome everyone that has joined us for the Holy Ground for Whole Communities Zoom Town Hall. I am thrilled to see and recognize that you can hear, and I'm realizing that I was kind of expecting the waiting room to open and everyone to be admitted and me to see all of your fabulous faces, and that's when I realized that actually you may need to not have your fabulous face be visible for reasons that are true for you, and I respect and honor that reality. As we are getting ourselves together and getting ready to pray, I am continuing to admit folks from the waiting room. If you would be kind enough to introduce yourself in the chat, say where you are from, what your church is in the diocese, and we will hopefully get a little bit of a chance to virtually meet and say hello to one another, even as we are welcoming folks to join the town hall. I am welcome Betsy from Emmanuel Petoskey. Welcome Darlene from Mediator in Harvard. Don't mind me. I'm looking at the waiting room and I'm looking at the chat. We know that we set up registration, and so we also are aware that there are probably a couple people that are going, oh, wait, I have to register? Oh, wait, and they'll be here in just a little bit. So welcome, Brian from Manistee and Holy Trinity, and Sandra from Mediator Harvard. And did I miss anybody? Catherine from St. Paul's and St. Joe.
Michael Blair, Manistee.
Michael Blair from Manistee. I see Mary Maycomber from Holy Spirit Belmont. Beck LeClaire. And we are recording this call, so I see that Sandra is also transcribing it. I see Don Stockdale from Trinity and Alpena. It is a blessing to be with all of you this evening, and I'm excited that you are here to learn more about Holy Ground for Whole Communities. Let's start with prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Holy and wonderful God, we give you thanks and praise for the miracle of this new program, which has coming to life against so many odds in its initial stages and will only fully come to life with participant congregations. Thank you for everyone who has worked hard for this evening, and thank you for the curiosity and the questions that have prompted us to gather. Be with us as we present and reflect and ask questions. Give us honesty, courage, and compassion, but especially give us a vision of how you would use the lands that we now hold to bless your people and all your creation. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. So we are here this evening for you to basically twofold. Some of you were with the Diocesan Convention and heard a 10-minute plenary presentation and got a handout, and fortunately still had questions and are here for that. But some of you may not have even heard that first 10 minutes. So we are going to do an overview. We are here, and Jess Kidder will be doing that. We are here to introduce you to one of our partners, Karen Delassie from Partners for Sacred Places, who could not join us in person at our convention, but who is going to be working with our first cohort, and she's going to share about what Partners brings to offer. And we are going to have plenty of time for your questions. Just in case you are someone who was curious about what did we pass out at convention, or maybe you lost it when it came back to you, I am putting a link in the chat for the document that was on everybody's tables at the Diocesan Convention. And that's our overview document for Holy Ground for Whole Communities that we passed out. So with that, I'm going to launch into a little bit of a bigger picture of the why, and then we'll move on to Jess talking about what congregations can expect. Karen will talk about partners, and then we'll do a little bit about Plainsong, and then we will move on to Q&A. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Oh, I love nods. Thank you. Um, so as you all may know, part of our organizing principle in the Diocese of the Great Lakes, not only do we seek to embody the love of Jesus Christ with grace, hope, and joy, but we are also committed to meeting the needs of our neighbors with compassion, and we're committed to the care of God's creation. And as you all know, most of our congregations own properties that are part of what our ancestors have provided for the mission of God in our time today. And as I look around this screen, I see people that I know are busy stewarding properties, considering how best to use properties. And when I say properties, I mean land, and I also mean buildings. And this program really grew out of the shift in perspective that I had when I was living at one time was my house. And I was walking around it knowing that God was calling it to a different use and to grow into being a ministry that God would use to make a difference for younger generations and for our neighbors and for all of God's creation. And I knew in 2012, 2013, 2014, when I was feeling this call and not knowing what to do about it, I knew that I did not know, and I knew that I was being invited on a journey of transformation. And I knew that that journey of transformation would not just change if I followed it, would not just change the use of the property that I was looking at, but it would also change me. And that is exactly what happened in lots of different ways. But that is because the journey that I went on was a journey of discipleship. It was a shift in perspective to see myself as God's creation, to see the property that I was looking at as God's creation, to see everyone around me as also belonging to God's creation. And then it was also a journey of curiosity. What is God bringing to life here? And, I went into that journey with some concepts, but with, and some hopes, and a lot of unexpected things happened along the way as I engaged that journey of discipleship. And as I look around the screen, I see other people that have engaged wild journeys of discipleship. Darlene Kuhn. So I'm thinking about all of your community garden building experience in Albion and your former call. And I could say, for every person on the screen that I know, I could name that for you too, because I know that as a diocese, we are committed to the journey of discipleship. And a lot of us have wild stories to tell. Um, this program exists to help you be in community, continuing your journey of discipleship, continuing your journey of growing in the presence of the Spirit and serving Christ in the world with more company, with more intentionality, and with not, well, maybe not more intentionality, with more structure sometimes, and with more tools. And the goal is for us to enter into this. It's going to be a 3-year pilot phase together. This program will grow with our cohorts, engaging it, using it. We'll perfect it, and hopefully our diocese can have a wider impact through it than we would have without it. That is certainly my hope, and it's certainly my hope that your church will be able to have a stronger impact for the love of God in your community because of participating in this program. Now this is my hype speech. Jess will tell you later about like how do you apply, um, but but that I'm really grateful. I will say, in all honesty, Jess and I have had some moments of like, we hope people will be interested. We hope people will apply. And this is a very encouraging town hall turnout, and I am hopeful that this will be helpful to you as you make your decisions. So as I am winding up my kind of bigger part in this, I'll say, as you know, we launched the announcement. It was open in September, but it was kind of quiet in September. We did our kind of big launch just this past weekend at the Diocesan Convention. There is an application window, which does close on November 30th for the first cohort. There will be 2 more cohorts. So the first cohort will be in 26. second cohort 27, third cohort 28. And all of that is funded through the Lilly Endowment. And with all of that, Jess will tell you more about what congregations can expect as part of this program.
Thank you, Nurya. I always appreciate you anchoring us in the history of how we got to this point. I met a lot of you at convention, but I will introduce myself again for some new faces and names I see here. I'm Jess Kidder. I'm your program manager, and I will be walking with you through this entire process. I bring a PhD in sustainability education, which comes from 2 degrees in geography. And I started my professional academic career really studying the earth and the earth's processes. And I wanted to understand the people, so I went into a human environment kind of scope. And then I realized that wasn't enough. I wanted to work with people, so I went into the education side of things. And sustainability education, from my perspective, is twofold. It's what we teach, so education for sustainability, and those are our broad categories of environment, the economy, social equity, and education, but also education as sustainability. How we teach becomes a way of sustaining ourselves. And so that's what I'm bringing to this, is a transformative educational experience. Like Nurya said, we are launching a 3-year program that will encompass 3 different cohorts. The first cohort will start in January, and that will be made up to 10 congregations. And every year we will welcome 10 congregations through this entire process. And starting from now, as Nurya said, the application deadline is November 30th. We then expect to make invitation announcements to congregations selected for cohort 1 by mid-December. And then we will gather for an orientation welcome in-person gathering in Mount Pleasant, January 31st. And all of this timeline information, if I'm going too fast, is on the diocesan website underneath the Holy Ground component of that page. So once we have our in-person orientation, we'll have an overview, we'll get to know each other, we'll start some of our learning opportunities. We'll then have 4 Zoom trainings, and those start in February, and they will be in the evening for 90 minutes, 7 p.m. to 8:30, and those will be February 10th and February 24th, and that will repeat again in March 10th and March 24th, again, 90 minutes, 7 to 8:30. And those will also be recorded in the event that maybe a member of your congregational team is absent, or if you want to share it more widely. Then we will gather for an in-person retreat near the Rockford area, because we're going to be spending some time at Plainsong Farm, and that will be April 17th through 18th. And we will gather for a half a day, we'll overnight in a wonderful hotel type venue, and then we'll meet again for another half day experience on the following day. And once we finish our in-person retreat, that will be the first time we're all in the same space where we have all of our partners. So we'll have Karen from Partners for Sacred Places, we'll have Emily from Plainsong Farm, and she'll also bring the Episcopal Service Corps Fellows, which is a very exciting component that Plainsong brings. They bring a very invigorated, engaged young adult perspective, as well as any manual labor needs that you may need as we get into the action part of your programs. So once we complete our in-person retreat, we will then begin the process of the site visits, where partners from Sacred Places, myself, a Service Corps member, will all come to your congregation and do a thorough building and land analysis, which Karen will get into much more detail here shortly. Once your community facilitation conversation and your site visit is complete, then it's kind of congregation-based work where you start to discern what is this action project that you want to get engaged in based on everying that we've learned so far, based on your building analysis, the land analysis, and where you're feeling called to meet these community needs within your specific context based on your unique gifts. Once we get through that process, then we will open our mini re-granting, where each congregation will receive $7,000 in seed funding. And I want to be sure to make it very clear that we do not expect you to enter the program with your action project, and we also don't expect you to complete your project within this one cohort year. Our only expectation is that you have a willingness to lean into uncertainty, to learn something new, to connect with new people, to connect with your community, revisioning your buildings and your lands in a way that can help your community flourish. We also expect congregations to be able to participate in a kind of storytelling based reporting so that we're able to capture your learning, because that's one of the big things that we need to present to the Lilly Endowment is what have we learned through this process? And I also hope that congregations are willing to learn alongside all of us. This is the first time we will all be coming together to put this program in the hands of congregations. And there's so much to take into consideration that I hope you're able to ask questions freely. You can send me emails, you can call me. The more questions you ask, the better we can curate a learning experience that really meets the needs of your community and highlights those unique gifts that you have within your congregation. So what we're hoping to get from that are wonderful stories of transformation, obviously, and practical application of, your buildings and lands within your communities, but also spiritual growth and connection to the land and the buildings in a way that really kind of feeds your soul. A lot of times we get involved in this work and we kind of forget to take care of ourselves, which if you were at convention is why I invited everybody to take a few deep breaths, like just to get centered and remember that, our heart and our hearts being content and sustained are really where all of this transformative energy comes from. We also hope for community engagement, more sustainable missions within your congregations. We'll also be providing you with a toolkit, which will help your decision-making process, as well as a referral network to help keep you connected in this work, even after your cohort year. And obviously a Bible study will keep our theological grounding as we work into some of the creation care scripture. And you also receive me directly. I am literally walking with you through this, here to help you with all of your questions and discern this entire process. And that's what I'm most excited for. In our creative development year, we do a lot of research in building this curriculum, but I'm really excited to get to know each one of you and understand your property and look at your land and look at what's going on in your community so that we can really find that intersection of unique gifts and community need. And as well as having this peer cohort to work with, there's so much we can learn from each other despite our congregational differences, whether you're urban or rural, or you have large attendance or small attendance, or if you've been doing creation care for years, or if you're just getting started, everyone working on this together really brings a different element of learning and sharing that really strengthens, all of these ties and relationships. And I already emphasized the Episcopal Service Corps Fellows. I can't say enough about the energy that they will bring as also leadership within this transformative process and helping with anything from technological needs to manual labor, as I said. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I want to pass it over to Karen, because I know a lot of you are really excited to hear about Partners for Sacred Places and the expertise that they bring to this process. So without further ado, Karen DeLossi of Partners for Sacred Places.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see my slides. I'm going to just hit play here. There we go. So I'm the Senior Director of Programs at Partners for Sacred Places, and I oftentimes when I'm giving presentations about even though we're already working with you, people are like, who is Partners for Sacred Places? So I always like to kind of frame who we are and what it is that we do. So we were founded in 1989. We're a national non-denominational nonprofit dedicated to the sound stewardship and active community use of older historic religious properties. Yes, I've practiced that statement many, many times, and hopefully all of you will be able to do the same thing with your churches as well. We have been working for 15 plus years in community engagement. I have been at Partners for 14 of those years. So it is probably no coincidence that the two are kind of linked. We're going to be offering for you some training modules really designed to see your churches as like this amazing value for the local community. So many times I work with congregations and they don't see the forest through the trees, and they see the cracks and they see the stuff in the corner that they don't know what to do with, and they see the paint that needs to be redone. But what they don't see is like how wonderful and beautiful and their facilities are, and also what their facilities also provide for the greater community. Like, I bet you didn't even know that this was actually a church. This is a church I went to in upstate New York. It's a Unitarian church. They called it a bunker. But I went there and I thought it was amazing. So I really can't wait to see everybody's churches in this program. So I'm just going to keep on going. Okay, so the slide says, we kind of do work at the intersection of heritage, of faith, and of community. And we've been doing this again since 1989. We have a lot of different things that we do for congregations. So much so that I find that when I describe my job or what it is that I do, it's not a sentence, it's more like a paragraph. We have a lot of training services. You will be benefiting from those trainings directly. As a matter of fact, I'm having a hard time figuring out what modules I would like to present to you. I wish I had more time because I could fill multiple days with all of the things that we hope to, present to you. We also have consulting services for folks that kind of have the extra flow and are really interested in community engagement services or capital campaign fundraising as well. And of course, none of that would be possible without all of our research, which I'm going to share some of it with you tonight, which I think you're really going to like. So we really talk about research, going really into public policy, really starting to think of ourselves and how we can advocate for congregations as the community centers that they really are, and the benefit that they provide to the communities that I don't think is often recognized by people in the community or by local government officials for sure. And then, of course, we have various publications and resources, some of which we're going to be shared throughout this program. So yeah, we're a national organization. We go everywhere. I'm located in Philadelphia, but I have colleagues in Chicago. I have colleagues in Connecticut, in Georgia. I think there's one in Wyoming. So we're really all over the map. We do lead a lot of public policy and research. Again, I'm going to share some of that with you. We are a group of trainers. A lot of us have been doing the training circuit for a long time. We love working with our congregations and hearing kind of their stories and bringing their stories to life. And we often say this, that we're a bridge builder. I know with my specific skill set, a lot of what I do, what I focus on is, if a congregation has space, how do they connect with outside entities who are looking for space? And sometimes you need to build that bridge between the two. And sometimes there's a language barrier. Church folks have a very inside baseball way of talking to each other that the secular world doesn't understand as much. So I really try to draw the bridges between the two so that you can actually see one another as a reflection of each other and that you actually kind of share a lot of the same values. So that's a little bit about Partners Growth. This is just more about what we do, feasibility studies, capital campaigns, community engagement. We have this wonderful Halo study, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about. We've done projects in Appalachia. We also have I would be remiss if I didn't mention the National Fund for Sacred Places. I do not have a slide for that. But maybe if Jess is so kind or Nurya is so kind, you can type into the chat fundforsacredplaces.org, FUND, fundforsacredplaces.org is our national grant making arm. We just announced 30 new grants. And I think we're giving away up to $500,000 for each go. It's highly competitive, but word on the street has it that our president is originally from Michigan, so he definitely has a soft spot for Michiganders. So, I think he's originally from Grand Rapids, So I just leave that tidbit there with no, I'm just saying. A little bit more. So what is the value of your sacred place? We like to think that you're not just houses of worship. Obviously, that is your main function, and that is why you are all on this call tonight. But what is the true value of these places? Well, we did a study. This study is actually old at this point. We did this study in 1996. And what this study said that the people that are benefiting most from your spaces. 81% of the people benefiting from your spaces and from those services that you provide to the community, 81% are not your members. And actually, that number is old because when we did the study again in 2016, so also still a little old, but when we did it again in 2016, it's actually 87% are not your members. So the people that are benefiting from you just existing and you doing all the wonderful things around you is 87%. And then the rest is the butts in the seats on Sundays. So I think it's really important to kind of, again, like, what is that connection between the external folks and your external community and your own community? So hopefully I'm going to try to like draw lines between that. This was our national economic halo effect of sacred places. Again, this was from 2016. We did a study of, I think it was 90 churches, synagogues across 3 major metropolitan areas. And your annual economic impact, if you're at an urban church, your average economic impact is $1.7 million a year. You are economic drivers of your communities. And tell me it's not even more so true as the social safety net of the government is falling around us. So that means it's going to be, this number is actually probably even going to be higher, I would venture to say. So the study included local spending, as the slide says here, local hiring, building maintenance costs. When something breaks, you got to get it fixed. People are coming to you for different events. Maybe they're coming for a wedding. Maybe they're coming for a baptism. Maybe they're coming for a concert or a lecture or a town hall meeting. But these are all activities that promote community economic development, and they actually do have an impact on people's lives. So you're actively changing all that. So there's a lot of very smart mathematicians and very smart folks. We did this in conjunction with the University of Pennsylvania, and we're hoping to actually do more of this as time goes on. We've been collecting more and more halos since 2016, so the numbers are really interesting. Now, I realize that not all of you are in urban areas. I have taken that into account because we also did a study in rural areas are different all across the country. So I'm not saying that one rural area is the same as another. However, we did do a study with the Duke Endowment and the Institute for United Methodist Churches in North Carolina. And their economic impact was $735,000 a year. And when you think about the economic impact of a rural community, how much farther those dollars go than even in an urban environment. So, and how critical that is to the rural community. So you really do become centers of health and wellness. You become centers of social activity. Mostly because maybe some of those other places are no longer present, or maybe they're really far, but you're really close. So, so I have the rural churches. I have y'all covered up too. So I want to make sure that everybody understands your importance in the ecosystem. Okay. So now, so I talked a little bit about the trainings, a little tiny bit about the trainings. Again, I have to figure out everything I want to teach you. But I thought after talking to Jess, it would be good to focus a little bit on the site visit itself. Because this may be something that people might be a little confused about. And I want to set everybody up for success. I want all of our cohorts to have the most successful site visit. And take advantage of the fact that you'll have 2 partner staff members. So you'll have 2 partner staff members that will tour your site. We're going to be hanging out with you for approximately 3 hours during your site visit. The first hour will be a tour of the facility. And as the slide says, I like being cheeky. I don't need to see your boiler room. This isn't like a home inspection. I'm not looking at the bones. I'm just looking at like, what is it that you have? I really am interested in what is it that you have in your space? How many large spaces? How many small intimate spaces? How much natural light do you have? Are there sinks in the room? Do the sinks work? Are there ceiling fans? Do the ceiling fans work? Do the windows open? Really kind of collecting as much data, both about the facility and about each individual room. We treat each individual room very carefully. After that, we then have like about an hour long conversation with you, with clergy and lay leaders. What's important to you? What's important to you in this community? What's important to you in this building? What is it that you want to reflect out to the community? Really, what are your values as an individual parish? So we know that you're representing the Episcopal Diocese of Great Lakes, but then also, what about you as a parish, and what about the community that you're all in, since you're all in very different ones? And then the last hour will be a community conversation. And as the slide says, that is not with your members. So these are with folks from outside. These are all those external folks. I can't tell you how many times we've had community conversations. People show up to the event and they're like, oh, yeah, this is my church. I'm like, oh, do you come here on Sundays? And they're like, oh, no. But they all call it their church. Or they love taking pictures outside of it for family events. But it becomes this thing. It's their church, but maybe they've never been inside. But maybe they don't know how to get inside. Maybe they don't know which door to open. And we invite you to kind of, cast a wide net. Arts and culture, health and human services, education, senior services, youth advocacy, all kinds of things. And we have ways to kind of walk you through the invite list. And what I can guarantee you is that people are interested in your spaces. They just don't know that they're welcome to come. And they get a tour of the space too. So part of the community conversation is they will get a very quick tour of the space. And then I sit down and say, what did you think? What did you think of the space? How was it? What are you excited about? And how is it that you might see yourself in this space? Or how is it that the community can make better use of the space? So there you go. It's 3 hours in length, pretty eye-opening. I think, yes, the next slide. So I wanted to give you my last slides. I just wanted to give you some inspiration because maybe it's a little difficult to kind of figure out how does all of this make any sense in terms of how is it going to turn our church around, whether we have $7,000 or not. And I can tell you this much. I've done this in other programs without the $7,000. And people have been very successful with it. It's all about, taking that and running with it. So this is First Presbyterian in Chicago. They went through our space sharing training a couple of years ago and have just absolutely flourished. If you Google them, I should have put their website in there, but if you Google them, First Presbyterian Chicago, amazing programming, so many partners in the space. I think now they even have like an art czar. So there's just like an art liaison, somebody that like kind of programs everything. And the spaces are all really being used on an everyday basis. It's really become, their space is open to I think their space sharing page says hospitality is for everyone. So it's really, really lovely. And they actually took everything that we said in the training and ran with it. So they didn't even get a community conversation. They just said like, oh, yes, 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 and yes. And they made the changes they needed to make. And then were able to enact all these great programs into their space. This next one is, I just realized there's Presbyterians. Okay, so should have had some different ones in there. But anyway, First Presbyterian in Albany, we actually did do community conversations. We did a number of community conversations with them. And they made a number of changes. First of all, their website did not have this on it before we did the community conversations. There was nothing about using their building. They had an entire education wing that they were convinced was going to be amazing for kids until they had some education folks come to the community conversations. And then they realized how much money and additional changes they were going to have to make to the space in order to in order to host the kids because there's all different rules, and they didn't realize that. But what they didn't realize is there were other entities in the community who also came to the community conversation, who leaned in and said, "Oh my gosh, we need this space." And now, like the entire they have 3 floors. Their entire third floor is rented by an LGBTQ advocacy organization in town, whose actual building is not accessible, but theirs was. First Presbyterian in Albany was. And it was not something that they were anticipating, but there it is. And again, it's on their website, so you can read a little bit more about their space sharing. I'm almost done, I swear. Okay. The next one, here we go, St. Paul's Episcopal. uh, so we did a lot of work in Indiana. Pretty much the entire state of Indiana received a visit from Partners for Sacred Places, every single Episcopal church. And in St. Paul's, I actually did do their site visit and their community conversation. And it turns out they had a school, like a middle school, literally right next door. And they weren't doing anything with them, nothing. Um, they invited them to the community conversation. They took a tour, and they started a partnership between the school and the church. So they had this basement that the church had actually like cleaned up. We gave them some recommendations. They cleaned it up, shined it up, gave it its own thermostat that they could control remotely, and gave it an electronic key system. So people could just type in a code to this door that went from the street to the basement space. And in that basement space, they kept hygienic supplies for kids that needed them, coats, school supplies. It was all non-perishable items that the kids could access like via the school. So the school nurse or a teacher would come in so they could access these items without feeling shame, or without being called upon, without being called out for like being the kid that needs those items. So, and the elementary school gave them a Community Member of the Year award. And they actually started talking to the high school as well and trying to figure out how they could start to, I mean, they didn't even want to show the basement to the community members. And I said, no, you have to show them the space. They're like, but it's dirty. I said, nobody's going to care. And they didn't. So it just really kind of goes to show like all of the different possibilities that can happen. And again, it's about like, we can like lead you to the water, but it's going to be up to you to actually like drink it and actually like do the things that you need to do in the space. What else do I have here? Oh yeah. Okay. So to make the most of the training, this is just what we recommend. Certainly, if you can't get this together, totally understand. But we do think that a team of 3 congregational leaders is best. I think it's good to have like your clergy person. They absolutely should be a part of this process if you have one. And then some other lay leaders, because you never know if someone gets sick or someone can't attend. We think it's good for you to attend together. So, definitely attend these sessions together, and really have a commitment to all the trainings. I have to say that we have found that the people that are attending, asking questions, and again, making the most of it, are really going to be the ones that are able to kind of make it into a successful project. And there we go. It's just a Q&A, thanks, but I can stop screen sharing now and definitely stop talking, and happy to answer questions.
Mhm.
Thank you for that, Karen. I know I had a lot of questions at convention about Partners for Sacred Places, and you did a beautiful job capturing as much as you could in the short amount of time. Nurya, I think we should jump right into Q&A. I see a hand up. Go ahead, Betsy. I would love to learn of your question.
Yeah, so senior clergy, that would be a rector, and then two lay leaders. Do the lay leaders need to be identified in the application process?
We do have space in the application for you to put their names in, the role that they play in your church or your community. And the reason for that is because you won't be able to participate in the training without a team of 3. So you're going to need to find them at some point, and it'd be better sooner than later. Now, recognizing that my hope is that you would be, there's so many people that would love to do this, that you're beating people off with a stick. Don't actually do that. But recognizing that that may not be the case, what we would hope is that there are 3 people who are willing to say yes to this journey right now.
Can I give
and-
an additional?
Yeah, just let me finish
Yeah.
I have one further thought. If it turns out, in between when you turn in your application in November and when the program starts in January, that you have to swap people because, that's also reality, but we would want you to apply with a team of people that are committed to taking the journey.
Great, thank you.
Karen.
The only thing I was going to add to that is that at least for the training, it's a really great, if you have somebody you think maybe they'd be really great for the vestry in a couple of years and you want to save one of those slots for a potential new recruit, this is a really great way to engage them. Because it gives, I always find that when you're trying to find the equivalent of a board member, they need like a job or a task. And this, I think, gives them that. So there might be someone that you have your eyes on, and this is a great way to engage.
We have a question over here in the chat. It looks like it's for you, Karen, from Sandra Gill. Overall, in what time, if actions in this program are after the cohort year, did Sacred Places examples implement these awesome spaces?
So St. Paul's, I think they did it within 12 months. I'm fairly confident. The rector really jumped on it. And he had some community engagement experience in his past, so I think that was helpful. But he was really emboldened by the community conversation to go and push forward. They were already doing things with like the car line for the elementary school. So they just kind of tried to expand it a little bit, and they just had never invited the school administration into the building. So it really made a big difference there. I think with First Presbyterian in Chicago, I want to say with them it was about 12 months too, that they kind of went from one thing to another. In Albany, I think it took a few years. I think that there was just a little more soul searching that they had to do. I think they were really hoping for just to kind of put kids up there. And then it ended up just being, financially not viable for them.
Thanks, Karen.
Mhm.
And looks like we have a question, a hand up here, Jennifer.
Hello, Jennifer Worley, St. Martin's. Couple of questions. One is, do we have to have somebody clergy as one of the 3? And then also, could you, as follow-up for this meeting, publish the dates of the training courses and the face-to-face that you already have planned, like on your site or in an email?
I will take the first one.
Yeah, you take the first one.
So I know some of our congregations do not have clergy, or they are in clergy transitions. And we understand that. Actually, a large portion of our diocese does not have regular clergy. They're served by supply, or they have a clergy person who is retiring, or in some kind of transition. Because of that, there is not a requirement to have a clergy person as part of the team. If you do have a rector, we would like to see the rector as part of the team. If you do have a priest in charge, we would like to see the priest in charge as part of a team. But if you have circumstances where that isn't feasible, that we don't want that to stop your congregation from applying. And certainly if your rector is, on a retirement journey, or you don't have one, like, don't put them on the team of 3. We want your team of 3 to be people that are going to be committed with you throughout the year of the program. And your project, you really want people that might be willing to commit past for the life of the project, or to transition. And that might be a few months into the next year. We don't know. You don't know either. And we do understand that humans have needs, and people can change. So I think that was both clear and ambiguous. Um, and if you have comments about that are specific, like please put in your application or send an email to myself or to Jess. Actually, no, send it to Jess. Send Jess an email if you have extenuating circumstances or something that you want to make us aware of that you didn't put in your application that you think we need to know. Then the second part of that was about the timeline. And I feel like the timeline is on the website. Jess, am I making that up, including with all of the dates?
That is correct. The general timeline is in the document that we already shared in the chat, but the specific dates are on the website, greatlakesepiscopal.org/HGWC, and also within that application page. You can find everything there. I'm happy to send you a follow-up email with all that information if that is easiest. So no worries
And
there.
I am actually looking at the website and realizing that the specific dates, I think we thought they were on the website, but it says February to March 2026, online training 1 through 4. So we do know what those dates are, but apparently they are not yet fully published. And Jess is putting them in the chat. And while Jess is doing that, I will invite Catherine Thomas to ask a question. Catherine, I think you froze. No, you're muted.
Yeah,
There you go.
right.
Now we're
Hi
all set.
there. Hi. Thank you for this. This is very informative. Do you look at the outside, like the yard? Our church is on an entire city block. The building itself proper takes up 1/4 of it.
Perfect. Yes, you're on
Um,
St. Paul's and St. Joe. I've been hearing about you for years.
Well, so yeah, and we do have a memorial garden that many of us will be in, and many are already in there. And I started a cutting garden to use on the altar, but there's just so much more. And
Yep.
we're thinking of like community gardens, things like that. Do you go into that at all? And have any expertise in starting that
Karen and
and
I,
working with that?
Karen
So
and
I
I both
have,
have different answers.
yeah, I
So
was gonna say,
Karen, you go first.
I have a short answer and then you can have the longer answer. So my short answer is yes, we do look at the outside and we do encourage you in that community conversation that there may be some entities that you know may be interested in the outside, because that becomes a part of what we're talking about. There was, again, in Indiana, we spent a lot of time in Indiana. The church itself didn't have a lot of space, but they had a very large parking lot, and then they also had a very large back lot. And both Purdue Extension was interested in the back lot, like the foresty back lot for their education program in agriculture. And the parking lot, there was actually a ministry called SAW that would go and build ramps for people's homes, like war vets that were amputees, building those, and they needed space to do that. And the parking lot was a good, so those things do happen, and we invite and encourage that conversation. So I tip the iceberg on that. And Nurya has a lot more to add, I think.
So what I have to add is the word nefarious comes to mind, which I was going to try to stop myself from saying, but apparently I did not. I kind of had a nefarious goal with this grant project to both help our diocese use and see and utilize our properties, but also to help Partners for Sacred Places learn more about climate mitigation through land-based solutions so that they could take that into the rest of their training across the country. So with that, there are multiple options for land-based ministry that can range anywhere from how are you, what are you could plant it, somebody else could plant it, to you could have develop affordable housing on it. We are, that he's a huge range. And my hope is that this Holy Ground for Whole Communities over the course of the 3-year pilot will develop the kind of materials and experiences that help churches to see their land and not just their buildings as an asset for ministry in their communities, particularly in an era where we know that there's going to be instability in the climate and that we need to build resilience in many ways. I have talked with soil conservation districts. I have talked with watershed agencies. I have talked with affordable housing development agencies. And hopefully, across all of those possibilities, there will be choices that you could make at St. Paul's and St. Joe, and then all of our churches that have land that they're looking at, and they know, especially land that isn't full of trees. That if you have land that's full of trees, that's a whole other conversation, I think. And I do know a forestry expert that's a priest now. But anyway, my hope is that this will enable you to not just look at the building, but also at the land with new eyes. Did that answer your question between both of us?
That does, thank you. And we are
Was that
across the street from
nefarious?
a grade school, and it
Oh,
was not
that's fascinating.
nefarious.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one other piece of information that we could, questions were arising, so we went to questions, but we also want to share a little bit about Plainsong Farm and the Episcopal Service Corps to folks who might not know. And I could do that if your questions are coming first for us. So if somebody wants to ask a question, this would be good. And if not, we can talk about those additional elements. I'm not seeing any, so I'm getting ready to talk about Plainsong Farm. So as part of this process, Plainsong Farm's Young Adult Service Corps members will be paired up with the congregations in the cohort. And when I say paired up, these are young adults who want to walk with older adults who are trying to make a tangible difference in the world and want to assist them in that journey. What the specifics of that will look like will really depend on the uniqueness of that young adult and the uniqueness of your congregation. But at this point, Plainsong already has two of at least three young adults that will be that are committed for the next year. One of them is somebody that's already been there for a year. One is someone that I think applied a year ago and ended up coming January, if I got that right. I'm not at Plainsong Farm anymore, so all of the details are unknown to me. Emily has all of that. And these young adults will have had their own kind of training experiences with Plainsong related to food accessibility, food justice, food growing, and also they're having their own experience with Plainsong in discipleship and what does it mean to be a Christian today. Some of them are Episcopalians, some of them are not. The Episcopal Service Corps has no requirement that actually you have to be open to hearing about Christianity, but you don't have to necessarily call yourself a Christian. That's part of who is attracted to the Episcopal Service Corps is people who are wanting a journey of justice and spirituality. So how you will be paired is, first we need to get the congregations in the program. We need to get the young adults Plainsong needs to get the young adults in their program. And then just know that you will not be alone. You are in a companioned journey. Jess, did I cover that? Is there anything you want to add?
You sure did. And I wanted to add on the land-based side, the Indigenous relations component. I know we held a small workshop at convention, we touched on it briefly, but should that be an area that a congregation decides to go, that is also something that would take place within that land analysis, the history of your land, relationships with Indigenous tribes in the area, and starting that journey of truth telling and reconciliation and relationship building. So while we may always think of, land, especially in the context of holy ground, we might think strictly growing because we are using Plainsong as kind of our experiential, learning laboratory during our in-person gathering. It can have many contexts, including going down into that journey of understanding the Indigenous perspectives that may be happening within your community and with that church land specifically. And I do know at least one of the fellows does bring some experience from those perspectives, from the work in the wider community and even farther out west. So I'm really excited about the addition of their wisdom and their experiences and what they can bring to us here in our congregations in Michigan. There's a question in the chat, from Mary, what are examples of lay leaders apart from vestry members? Who do you envision as lay leaders? For me personally, anyone in your congregation or even related to your congregation, as young adults and youth can also participate, who feels called to this work, who feels called to dreaming big and getting involved in a creative, transformative process, who's willing to share their learning and lean in and come up with new ways of utilizing buildings and lands. Nurya, do you have a perspective on who's envisioned for lay leaders?
I appreciated Karen's idea earlier of having this be a good someone that maybe is someone you might think about as a future vestry member, if it's not a current vestry member, that I would even say a newer member to your church is a good fit for this because they're not necessarily going to think about the church in the same way that longstanding leaders are. You do want somebody with a level of time and energy that they have enough bandwidth that this is something that they're happy to think about. It feels like a possibility for them, and is a way that they can make a difference. I think those are, I would not want to put criteria that are any, more restrictive than that. Is that, Karen, you look like you have something.
Yeah, I know, I completely agree. And I actually started typing a response in the chat, but then I stopped and we got to the question. But what I was gonna type is that like maybe you have like a stalwart volunteer who's just always there, but doesn't have the time to kind of be on a vestry. But they're always there for the food pantry day, or like whatever kind of programming that you might be doing. And again, like it's about like it's a different level of engagement, and it has a start date and an end date. So I think it's a little easier for people to swallow.
And I would also say people that enjoy learning.
Mm-hmm.
The goal of this program, from the Lilly Endowment perspective, is that your congregation would engage in a learning journey. The Lilly Endowment is not funding change in the use of your space. I mean, they are because you get a $7,000 regrant, but the goal is it's under something called the Thriving Congregations Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of that whole initiative is to help churches thrive by engaging in learning communities together, reflecting together, imagining together. And so, somebody that might want to be a little nourished by a life of faith, and to have their imagination expanded. Those are I hope that's
And
all of us.
yeah, and it's really nice to connect with other churches that maybe aren't your neighbors.
Yeah.
That maybe you don't see a lot because you will be spending the training period with them and then the in-person day. So you do kind of get like a little bond and you can kind of, you're going through the same experience. So I always think that that's kind of nice to have too.
And that's a good point that Nurya makes, that Holy Ground for Whole Communities is within this larger nationwide Thriving Congregations program. So being part of a cohort really connects you to a much larger upwelling of folks doing similar work throughout our country and making change towards climate change and social justice. And for me, that's kind of the whole local to global aspect. So it's not just our diocese, although there'll be tremendous impact there, but we're also participating in a much larger community of folks who are doing similar work.
before I forget to say this, I also want to reinforce that there is no cost to churches to participate, and there is no financial cost to participants. So, your mileage will be reimbursed to drive to the in-person training. You will stay at the hotel at no cost. That is part of what the grant is for. And so, you may also, in terms of who wants to apply, who would like to have a wonderful experience with a community of other faithful disciples, and grow in ministry. I hope that's all of us. I want to make sure before we conclude to just drop, Jess has very helpfully, so Jess is our program manager. Jess literally spends the day thinking about this program, creates amazing documents, has fabulous conversations. And before I see your last question in the chat. So anyway, let me finish my thought before I get to that question. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Jess with any specific questions that you have. If you feel like I'm not sure we should apply because, then okay, talk to Jess about your because. Jess will encourage you to apply because we are looking for 10 bold congregations willing to be in the first cohort. But also Jess will answer your because, and she will not ask you to apply if it's not right for you right now, because she's a person of integrity. So just it's a no pressure. It's a no pressure environment. Before time expires, please give examples of spending what a team can do with $7,000 in what time period. So I'm just going to brainstorm off the very top of my head. One of the things that Karen showed you in the example was the website that had the opportunity for space use on it. In $7,000 in a year, you could have a new refresh website, and it could have a page for space use, and you could be making your space available to your community. In $7,000 in a year, you could partner with your soil conservation district and add native plants to your property, and you would have money left over to throw a party and invite the closest group of young adults to be part of stewarding it on behalf of the climate with you. With 7,000, I'm just with $7,000 and a year, you could probably renovate a room. It might not be a big renovation, but you could do a small renovation in a part of your property, with $7,000. And I'm going to ask other people to do this next. So just be warned, Karen and Jess, you're coming, with $7,000 in a year. I wonder if you could possibly get like a local college student intern to imagine or consult with you, maybe with a professor project on land use connect, or you could do a study related to your community needs and how your space might connect. Um, I I feel like there's a cheap consultant available for something in $7,000 in a year. So I'm running out of brainstorming. You literally just watched me do this live. I will turn this over to Jess and Karen. We will have more examples of this kind when we see you in a training. Jess, do you have ideas of examples?
I do, and they're more kind of nuts and bolts. Should you have a small piece of property and you want to start a pollinator garden, $7,000 could get you well on your way, resourcing yourself in that direction. I like the idea of hosting to create more energy around your project and keep moving things forward. I think of the congregation in Michigan who is hoping to employ a herd of goats to deal with an invasive species problem. I mean, the possibilities are endless. We realize that $7,000 is not going to be a major capital improvement in funding, but we hope that it seeds these ideas so that your journey towards a more sustainable mission of revisioning your buildings and land, it gets you started and gets you well on your way of thinking about this. And I also want to remind you that it doesn't necessarily have to happen in that year. Your project could take longer than that year, as long as you keep engaging with me and telling me about what you're doing and how it's going, because those are the stories that I want you to be proud of, but also the stories that I want to capture to show the thriving congregations and the Lilly Endowment, hey, look what we're doing in Michigan. Like we're actually learning and we're actually doing something with that learning. So the possibilities are endless, and I often hesitate to want to offer examples because I don't want to confine your imagination for what can happen in your community. Karen, do you have anything to add?
Yep, I have three really quick ones, real world ones too. With $7,000, I have seen congregations add air conditioning to one room that desperately needed it. With $7,000, I have seen them repair a gym floor in its entirety that really needed it. And I think with $7,000, and this is not a real world example, but this is just because I've been at Partners for so long, you could leverage the $7,000 and try to match that and find $7,000 more dollars. So you have $14,000. That's not a requirement of this grant. I want to let you know, but we're really big on trying to take money that you might have and leveraging it for additional dollars. So maybe if you have a larger project, you might be able to accomplish that.
And this is where I put in a plug for being in cohort 1. The Lilly Endowment has few requirements for us, but one of their requirements is that we spend every dollar of this money by the end of 2028. So if you are in the first cohort and you have a project that takes you a little longer, you have all of that time. If you are in the last cohort, you don't get to have a project that takes a little longer. You need to spend your $7,000 that year. So just a little incentive to be the trial. There's always, and you're the first group of some people doing something. It's a unique experience. So there's a positive aspect to it as well. I feel like if we have answered your questions, I recognize that you may have come to the end of this time. We have all maybe come to the end of this time, but I hope sincerely that this is not the end of our time together. I hope sincerely that folks here on this call have been motivated to want to be part of this. I am so curious about what God can do through us when we are working together to find God's way. And I'm grateful for every one of you for taking the time to show up tonight. I am going to once again drop this link for the website, part of our website in the chat. That is where you can click through, get the application. You've got a month. You do need to have the approval of your vestry, and if you have a rector or priest in charge, their support as well. And that's just to make sure that when congregations apply, everybody's on the same page about applying and nobody's surprised. So we are prayerfully hoping for your applications and deeply grateful for your willingness to join this journey. Good night and God bless you.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night and thank you.
Thank you.